to A-Ring's Analytics Cafe with your host, Bianca Jane.
Welcome everybody. This is Bianca, your host to Analytics Cafe, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Libby Duane, who is the Chief Customer Officer of Alteryx as well as the founder of Alteryx. And such a pleasure to have you here, Libby.
Thank you, Bianca, very much. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about diversity and analytics, so timely given all the things that are going on here in US and across the world. So Libby, if you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. It's exciting to be here, and as Chief Customer Officer at Alteryx, for those of you in the audience that are not aware of who Alteryx is, we are a leader in the data analytics technology space, enabling all departments across every part of an organization to access data and to be able to drive amazing insights across their enterprise. And as founder of Alteryx, along with Dean Stoker and Ned Harding, we've been at this now for 23 years. And as I said to a team here at Alteryx this morning, I feel like our journey is just getting started. So it's a very, very exciting time to be within the analytics community globally.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I, my experience with Alteryx has been also tremendous. I experienced it about a decade ago when, you know, the access, the data democratization had just started, where people were like, oh, how do we get access to not only just the, you know, framed and cubed data, which was available in most of the, you know, business objects of the world that time. From there to how do we get access to more detailed data to everybody at right level. And that's where my experience with, and I was at that point still at PayPal, I was heading up business analytics there. That's where my experience of Alteryx started. And I was like, oh, this is a tremendous tool that I could see the potential. And I was, you know, at some point I made sure that I got the stocks as well, right? So it was something I can see the value. So today we are talking about diversity, and I wonder from your perspective, you know, how do you think of diversity? Why diversity, and how is it relevant specifically to analytics and data science?
You know, Bianca, it's a great question that you ask, is how do I and how do we at Alteryx think about diversity? And so frequently that conversation is immediately led into a discussion around the ratio of men to women in an organization. And people will say, well, I have, you know, 30% or 60% women on my team, or I have, you know, I have work to do where I have to hire more women. But at Alteryx, we think about diversity as a much broader and richer set of analytics, essentially, because when you talk about diversity, it's really not only a male versus female ratio.
Yeah.
It's all of these elements that make us as humans different and similar. And so when you think about diversity, or when we think about diversity at Alteryx, it's about age, it's about race, it's about your country of origin, it's about your learning path, your background. Because as we think about diversity, it's that ability to get all these different life experiences and work experiences and people experiences to come together to enable that creative process. Because so frequently the analytics, the best analytics, is actually a very creative and iterative process.
Yes.
It's that ability to keep asking more questions. And when you get diverse people with diverse backgrounds and diverse skill sets in the same room, shall we say, to talk about how can we solve for this, or what data sources might drive greater insight, it's all those different elements of those diverse backgrounds and experiences and skill sets that are going to add to that creativity. And as we say at Alteryx, analytics is a social experience. And so think about all of the different aspects that could play into driving insight, and all those different data sources coming together to drive insight, that's how we see diversity really being such a broad category.
That makes a lot of sense. And from my experience as well, Libby, because we use a framework called Badr for, as most of our audience knows, we have a data science company. And we use a framework called Badr to, which is a recipe-driven approach to solving business problem, to starting from, we have a problem, we have a customer churn issue, we have a deployment issue, we have whatever issue, all the way to getting to insights. And like you said, it's a creative process. It's a social experience. And a lot of that for us, we start with hypotheses. And the best hypotheses come from those with the most diverse of the background. So when we are generating hypotheses, we say, no idea is a bad idea. Let's put, and it's all first principle thinking, right? If this is a problem, what is the solution? What do we each of us think is the solution? What are the things which are driving this problem, right? So very much first principle, but very much asking people from marketing or product and people coming from different background, different departments, because they touch, for example, we are doing a customer analysis. Marketing touches customer, as well as operations touches customer, as well as, your product is touching customer. Different departments are going to touch customers. Different individuals who are working with that sort of same customer cohort are going to touch customer differently. They'll have different ideas or hypotheses around that same problem that you're looking at. So that diversity adds to the richness in hypotheses. And now I know we were talking about diversity from the race and the gender and the background perspective, but I think that all adds up to, the departments, the gender, the age, the experience, wherever you're coming from, which zip code you're living in, all of that will add to our view of the world. And hopefully, like a lot of memes which are getting, passed around in the internet these days, on one side it looks like a square, and the other side it looks like a triangle. But the reality is it's a shape which reflects as a square and a triangle on one of the the two sides as a 2-dimension. But 3-dimension reality, the truth, so to say, is well formed from many, many different perspectives. And so I think that's what, as you were also referring to, diversity adds to this whole aspect of data science, because the whole idea of data science is also to get to insights quickly, right? To get to answers quickly. As quickly as you can, and that hypothesis adds to it. So that's great. I think there's a lot of commonality and alignment with how we are thinking about it. A question for you, Libby, is why is this important personally to you? Why is diversity so important for you?
It's important to me, Priyanka, because from an organization perspective first, in order for us to be able to serve the global community that we serve, we as an organization, we as a company have to be thinking very broadly. We have to be ready, willing, and able to support and develop those relationships with our customers and with our partners and any future customers and partners that we're doing work with. And if we don't think about diversity as a key element to be able to connect with those unique cultural requirements or skill sets that people have or skill sets that people want to develop, and if we're lacking that diversity, if we look at everything just one way, we're going to miss a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I believe that holds true for every organization. It's that ability to, as you said a moment ago, see a problem as a circle and a square, but at the end of the day, realize we're trying to solve a problem. And the commonality in this example is that they're both a shape. And so how do we approach that problem? And so from a diversity perspective, we have to not only be aware of the diversity and the importance of diversity, but also bring and include, this whole conversation of inclusion is bring that diversity, bring those different people, include them in the process to be able to solve for the right answer around an analytics problem. And from a diversity perspective, the other reason that we see it as so important is that when you bring that diversity into problem solving, it's proven from both McKinsey and PwC, who have done studies with leaders from their respective client organizations. Organizational leaders are looking for that diversity because they know that it's going to drive better value, better business performance that's going to impact both top and bottom line revenue. And so looking at those results, it's very, very important to be able to say, I've got to diversify my team. I've got to make sure that we're ready to take on these questions that are global questions and be able to face that global community that we're working with.
Makes sense. So the net gist of what I think you are sharing is basically, if for companies who want to survive in this global environment and have global customer base, and want to make sure that they are optimizing their top line and bottom line, diversity is the key, one of the keys to sort of unlock it. And there's so many aspects of it. I mean, think about time zones, think about, perspectives, think about localization, there's just so many aspects of it that we can go down. But I want to ask you sort of a double click on this, Libby. Why, this is a perspective from the enterprise perspective, but from your own personal life, why is diversity important to you?
Well, and for me personally, Bianca, I was raised, I actually had a chance to think about this question. I was raised in an environment where my father was self-employed. He was an entrepreneur and a sole proprietor, and lived in an environment where I was never told, you can't do that.
Wow.
And so from a diversity perspective, to be a founder of a publicly traded software company, that for me, the diversity of our team and the diversity of our customer base is what makes this such an exciting journey. And for me personally, having never been told I can't do something, that enabled me to never be stopped. Yeah. And I believe that the diversity of an organization and having diversity as a key part of the culture of an organization helps every company really blossom and grow. And being open to those different ideas, new ideas, different ways of approaching a problem is so key. As you said, to be a global company, you've got to be thinking globally and acting globally. And when you create the makeup of your organization to look like a global community, you're then able to serve that global community. And that's where diversity absolutely plays a key role.
Well, that's an excellent point there. And with the nuance of, you can only serve your customer that looks like your employees, right, in a way. So you have to sort of have a reflection of both inside out from that perspective. And such a gift your father and your parents gave you when they say you can't be anything. And I'm hoping to do the same for my daughter. I have a 6-year-old and pretty much when she says, Mom, I wish I can fly. I said, yeah, potentially. Like, I think, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it.
Yeah, and you just touched on something, Bianca, that I think is key for all of our listeners to be aware of, and that is what you just said about your six-year-old daughter. I've learned, as I've been in this discussion around diversity over the last few years, that parents of young children today tell me that even in school today, their first graders, third graders, sixth graders, ninth graders are being instructed by teachers that are actually saying, boys do this and girls do this. And I heard this and I said, wait a minute, what's wrong with this picture? This is actually influencing the lack of diversity that we're experiencing in the workplace now.
Absolutely.
So we as leaders, not just you and I, but everyone on this listening audience has to be thinking about how do we break that cycle in schools today, going back to, first grade.
Yeah.
How do we break that cycle so that boys and girls are thinking about how do we solve this together? how do we come together, regardless of your gender, your race, your age, your religion, your country of origin? How do we come together to solve? And so we have to talk to all levels of education leaders today about the importance of bringing teams together to solve problems, so people get used to working with, children get used to working with and playing with and solving with those individuals that are different than them, that have that diversity, because that diversity is going to bring that creativity to solving.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I actually on purpose got my daughter. My daughter still loves pink and purple, although there's nothing I do to support that. But so I got her her first, after many years of doing balance bike. She was an early biker, so I got her a BMX bike, which was green on purpose. And
Yep.
she asked me, "Mom, I want purple." I'm like, I think this looks beautiful, and I got a matching green helmet for her.
Yeah.
This is me being purposefully deliberate about making sure. And then there's so many of these instances which happen around in our household where I keep sort of giving her, because like you said, there's a lot of outside influences of still people having that ideas about gender, as well as you do this, that this, or this cannot be done, this should not be done. And I'm on a deliberate basis, I'm basically on a daily and deliberately I'm basically sort of undoing that by sort of emulating, because you can't talk unless you walk that, and so I'm walking it with her. But going back to sort of specifically to our conversation, to a lot of our audience who are in data science and professional world, this whole aspect, which is the whole transformation which is going on in Americas and outside, it looks very much like a cultural event, right? It's a cultural transformation that this country is going through, which is, there is the whole history of slavery, and then from there, how did we come to be? It looks very much it looks like it's in the social fabric, but it doesn't look real, because in the world of business, we say, hey, I have blacks working with me, I have browns working with me, I have different colors and different, so especially in Silicon Valley, it feels like not real. This issue is not real because we have so much diversity. When I'm talking to some individual, I'm collaborating with them, I almost don't even know where, unless there's an accent, you don't even think about where they come from, or, where you're just sort of like putting your heads together. How do we, for people who are in the professional world who say this does not exist, right? That there is no disparate, there is no, we are very diverse already from the professional world. And this thing that is going on is only existing in the social, economic sort of world out there. How do you respond to that? Or how does that translate, the professional world and then our personal worlds of what we are seeing happening to George Floyd's of the world? How does it sort of come together?
Yeah. Well, and as you bring this up, Priyanka, I actually had this conversation within Alteryx not too long ago, and it starts at home. We all have to be thinking about those biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious biases that we may have as humans. And by being aware of them, that's the first step. It's that first step of I am biased, or I am now aware of this bias that I have around whatever it is. People who have, different ways of looking at problems, it's as long as I'm aware of the bias that I have, then I can do something about it or choose to not do something about it. And so from a diversity perspective, I think it's so important that we as humans are aware that we have these, and then determine how is that influencing our actions, our speak, our recommendations. Because I'm frequently asked, how do we get more women into the STEM programs?
Yeah.
Science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right.
And it goes back to that conversation we had just a few minutes ago, which is tell that 6-year-old girl, as you're doing with your daughter, sure, you can go and study, engineering, or you can go and perfect your math skills. That's not just reserved for one group or another.
Yeah.
That's really what we have to do. And as we look at the society and the environment that we're in today, we absolutely have to be this way at home first and say we're going to remove those biases that we have, or remove those opinions that we have, or adjust those opinions that we have. That then allows us to move into our bigger community outside of our homes, and say, here's how I now want to influence my community.
Yeah.
And in other cases, it's a global community. Here's how I want to influence that global community.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because actually at the end of the day, we are humans working as managers and founders and so on, right? But we are actually humans. We are just playing these other roles. And so our own biases and our own beliefs show up in manifests in our day-to-day activity. And specifically, it's so heartwarming to see these thoughts from you, because as a founder of a publicly traded company, to be holding such position of power, but thinking really about a sort of more a socialistic way about empowering, including all, not about just the few. And it's so important to see. So how do you recommend, what's your few words of advice for enterprises and individuals who are looking to bring this conversation into their organization, to sort of start having more open conversation about we need to build more diversity, and how do they go about doing this?
Well, and that's a great question, Pianka, because as I see it, it's really the discussion that is not just a bottom-up discussion. It's not just one leader or one team saying we're going to be more diverse.
Yeah.
It also has to be a top-down discussion within organizations. So I approached speaking to other leaders of companies and say, as part of your conversations with your teams, with your company, it's that ability to bring this conversation forward and make it part of the culture, the fabric of a company, of why this is important. It's not just, it can't just be, as I said at the start, this conversation around statistics. Yeah. It has to be felt, and it has to be emulated from the top of the organization down and across the entire enterprise. And so when I have the opportunity to speak to other leaders like your listenership, it's that ability to make sure that it's not just a reporting of statistics, it's also culturally felt, and that the teams feel like they're actually able to make an impact by bringing that diversity into their teams and then sharing that diversity across the organization.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of research, Libby, that I think you may have read as well, and most of it's available, is talking about how the culture of inclusion makes for a better workplace. And so there's a lot of conversation about, what makes an employee stay. And that whole aspect of, you don't leave you leave your team, you don't leave a company. And that whole aspect of, if the manager and the team is being as an inclusive environment where, everybody is respected from different perspective, and it's not, sort of a cookie cutter approach of solving problems or living our operations, that it enables you to retain, it's actually really good for your company, because, you'll retain talent, because
yes.
they appreciate working, they feel included, they appreciate working for organizations and teams which are sort of open. So,
yeah.
Wow, this has been a tremendous journey of a conversation that we've had, all the way from data science to diversity to also talking about gender biases, and then inclusion of women in analytics. And I personally think, Libby, and I think I may have shared one of my articles from Forbes, which I wrote a few years ago, about Athena Boom, and how women specifically are very well suited for the job, specifically in analytics, because we have a better sort of, I'm generalizing, but a lot of us have very good connection between intercortical connections, it's called, where we are able to use right brain and left brain together. And analytics is a lot of, it's creative process, as well as very much, very much a structured problem solving process. And if you can marry those two together, which very many women are, that, it enables you to become a good data scientist, or good, a citizen analyst, which, a lot of what Alteryx is going for. So any last few tips for our listeners, anything you would want to add along this topic?
Well, and the one thing that I'll add as we think about this, Priyanka, is one of the words that I love to use and to hear teams talking about is to innovate. And according to the Greatest Places to Work back in 2018, going back a couple of years, they said that when employees feel like they're able to be themselves at work, whoever they are, men, women, young, old, Black, white, Asian, whatever it is, those employees are 6 times more likely to innovate.
Wow.
And when you have innovation going on across your teams, as leaders, there's nothing more that we could ask for, is that ability to approach problems creatively, approach solutions that are going to change the way we're doing business, that are going to drive greater insights. And so if I were to close with one thought, as leaders, it's that ability to empower innovation across your teams.
Wow, so powerful, Libby. This is so tremendous. So not only letting people be themselves is so important, because it actually helps your bottom line and top line. So it makes sense and make things inclusive. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Libby. I hope our viewers think, and our viewers and audience thinks the same. For those who are looking to follow you or get in touch with you, Libby, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
Please follow me on LinkedIn, Libby Duane Adams on LinkedIn. I'd love to jump into conversations with you.
That's wonderful. All right, for folks, this is our episode on diversity and analytics. And I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you. And as always, feel free to comment. We'll continue this conversation online, offline, and we'll see you next time.